Tonight, on Closer Look, the disappearance of Nuseiba Hasan. It was 18 years ago that she was picked up outside of her apartment by a family member and taken for a drive to the family farm on 8th Concession in the heart of Flamborough. She was never seen or heard from again. Flamborough Today reporter Kara Nickerson has been following this story and joins us now from Flamborough. Kara, let's start with the obvious question first. It was 9 years following Nuseiba's disappearance in 2015 that she was even reported missing, and that didn't exactly happen on purpose. Why such a long delay? How did the family not speak up right away?
Scott, what I found was that some of Nuseiba's family didn't seem to know she was missing at all. Her sisters believe she'd returned to Jordan. She'd lived there for several years when she was a teenager. And from the court records I found while I was working on the article, they show that one of Nuseiba's brothers, Hassan Hassan, had told one of Nuseiba's sisters, she had 7 siblings, that she had run off again. So for most of the family, I don't know if they really understood that she was a missing person. At this point, her family still really hasn't spoken up. Nuseiba's sister Sarah was interviewed for a Gimlet podcast on Nuseiba's disappearance in 2023, but in court documents, she was adamant that Nuseiba is still alive somewhere. When Nuseiba was first reported missing in 2015, there was speculation from an unnamed family member that Nuseiba had been killed by another family member. But of course, because the case is still open, we really don't have many answers on that.
All right. I read your two-part story, and it was fascinating. Some obvious challenges for police in trying to solve this case. You mentioned a 9-year gap and fading memories. What are police saying, and how has that gap impacted the quality of evidence or the willingness of witnesses to come forward?
Well, it might be hard to admit, but 2006 is a long time ago now. If you try to remember what you were doing the week of November 26, 2006, it's very difficult. It was almost 2 decades ago. So Detective Daryl Reed, he's the head of the investigation with the Hamilton Police. He's been working on this case for almost 10 years. And he told me Nuseiba's case is the longest delay he's had in an investigation between when things occurred and reporting to the police. So that already is an issue. There's a 9-year gap between what the police say was a homicide and the police starting the investigation. And then since then, another 9 years has passed. By the time police were able to search the family's property in 2016, they didn't find anything. So when so much time passes, people might not want to revisit. Their memories can become foggy. But Detective Reed also told me that time can make people talk. So there's still a little hope that something might come out of this.
All right, Kara, let's talk about the role the community has played. Have there been efforts to bring attention to Nuseiba's disappearance, or has this case largely remained under the radar?
It's a bit of both. There's been a good amount of media coverage on Nuseiba's disappearance. Here in Hamilton, the Hamilton Spectator has been writing about her case regularly since 2015. There's been a podcast about this by Habiba Noshin from Gimlet, which has brought a lot of attention to the case. But when it comes to people actually in Flamborough, people don't seem to really talk about it. I think it's difficult because Flamborough is such a small kind of rural community, for people to face that this tragedy happened in their community. And I think because of the amount of time that's passed since the actual, alleged murder, in 2006, Hamilton police becoming aware of it in 2015, and then another 9-year gap between that investigation and now, I think people are kind of distant from it. But I also just find that facing this sort of tragedy in such a small community is difficult for people to swallow. While I was working on this story, I felt very strongly about it. It ended up a lot longer than originally intended. And when I read it back, I just feel like there's so much more to say. I do think that my intention with writing this was that people in this community would kind of take more note of what happened.
Now, Nuseiba had a daughter at 19 that after 2 years, she relinquished to CAS. How significant now is the role of Nuseiba's daughter in the ongoing investigation?
Nuseiba's daughter, she goes by the name Yasmin, and her involvement in this case is incredibly important. When I spoke to her for the article, it was a very difficult conversation, and I got the sense from her that talking about Nuseiba in general isn't easy, but she has kind of been the most fierce advocate for Nuseiba. She's pushed to have Nuseiba pronounced dead. She pushed to become the executor of Nuseiba's estate, and she won both of those things in court. She also is the one who originally reached out to a journalist to kind of create like a longer, deeper dive into her case, which was the podcast that was made by Gimlet. And, you know, she's been willing to speak to media outlets, even though it's something that I got the sense is very difficult for her to talk about. I think that honestly, she should be very proud of herself and the strength that she has, and what she's been able to do in terms of getting justice for Nuseiba and getting attention on the case in general.
You mentioned the chance of a family member being involved. The investigation explored the possibility of an honor killing. How has this angle shaped the inquiry, and what other theories are investigators pursuing?
When I spoke to Detective Daryl Reed, I asked directly if Nuseiba's homicide was being considered an honor killing. His answer was that police try not to get hung up on one theory. I think because this is still an unsolved case that's still being worked on, there's a lot that Hamilton police probably know and aren't at liberty to say. I found the term honor killing is never used in court documents for Nuseiba's death, her death declaration. But there's a fair bit of talk about her family's strict religious values and how Nuseiba was thought to have rebelled against them. Hamilton police strongly believe that someone in Nuseiba's family knows something. But Detective Daryl Reed told me directly, we do believe family members got her to the family farm where her untimely demise took place, but we won't identify who in that investigation is the actual suspect. So that's kind of left open-ended. If I can just add something, for anyone who reads the two-part article, I would really like them to keep in mind that Nuseiba was only 26 years old. Her life was just beginning when she went missing, and from everything I read about that life, she seemed like a young woman who was desperately seeking the support of her family. Police believe that someone in that family knows what happened to her, and that person needs to come forward because she deserves justice.
Flamborough Today's Kara Nickerson with tonight's closer look on the disappearance of Nuseiba Hasan.